All right, let's jump right in. We hear about groundbreaking medical studies all the time, right? But how can we really be sure we're getting the whole story? Today, we're going to look at a surprisingly simple checklist that became a huge deal, a global standard, for making sure we can trust what we read in medical research. Just think about that for a second. This question, it really gets to the very heart of what we're talking about today. Because transparency, it's not just a bonus feature. It is the absolute foundation of scientific progress and, more importantly, patient care. You see, even the most brilliant, world-changing science can have a critical flaw. And it's often not in what's said, but in what isn't. This is what we call the reporting blind spot. And believe me, it can have some really serious consequences. Now, whenever we talk about the best of the best in medical evidence, we're almost always talking about the randomized controlled trial, or the RCT. This is the gold standard. It's specifically designed to be the most objective, most reliable way to figure out if a treatment actually works. And here's the catch. A perfectly designed study, flawless, is pretty much useless if the final report is vague or incomplete, or even worse, if it's misleading. How the story is told matters just as much as the story itself. And we're not just talking about little typos or minor mistakes here. Poor reporting can cause doctors to completely misinterpret the results. It can stop scientists from combining studies into these really powerful meta-analyses. And ultimately, it just chips away at our trust in science itself. The stakes are incredibly high. So, how do we fix this blind spot? Well, thankfully, a group of scientists got together and developed a solution, a clear, structured framework designed to bring consistency and transparency right to the forefront. And this isn't some newfangled idea. This solution, it's known as the CONSORT guidelines, and it was actually introduced way back in 1996. Ever since, it's been updated and tweaked, and now it's pretty much the standard for many of the world's most respected medical journals. You know, the idea behind CONSORT is actually super simple, but it's incredibly powerful. The best way to think about it is like a pilot's pre-flight checklist, but for medical researchers. It forces them to be clear at every single step, making sure nothing critical gets missed, from the nitty-gritty methods and results all the way to who paid for the study. Okay, so this checklist has been around for years. You'd think the problem would be totally solved by now, wouldn't you? Well, the reality is kind of a classic good news, bad news story. We've made progress, for sure, but some pretty big gaps are still there. So on one hand, CONSORT has definitely led to real improvements. We're seeing way more transparency and a lot more consistency from study to study. But, and this is a big but, on the other hand, some crucial gaps just won't go away. Enforcement by journals can be all over the place, and maybe most worrying of all is this issue of selective reporting. And this problem, selective outcome reporting, is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when researchers shine a spotlight on the good results, while the not-so-good results get kind of swept under the rug. This creates a totally distorted picture of a treatment's real effects, and that can be incredibly dangerous. So, if researchers are sometimes part of the problem, then who's responsible for the solution? Well, the answer really involves the big institutions that publish all this research and the kind of future they can help build. At the end of the day, medical journals hold all the keys. They're the ones who decide what gets published and what standards that research has to meet. They're not just passive platforms, they are active gatekeepers, and they have the power to demand higher quality from everyone. So what can they actually do? It really starts with a pretty simple action plan. 1, mandate the checklist, no exceptions. 2, train your peer reviewers so they know what to look for and how to use it. And 3, audit yourself to make sure the standards are actually being followed. These 3 steps could lift the entire research world. And looking ahead, this whole thing keeps evolving. We're starting to see digital tools that can automate parts of the reporting process, which is cool. There's also a growing movement to focus on reporting outcomes that actually matter to patients, not just to scientists. And there's a huge push to get everyone, everywhere, on the same page with global standards. Which brings us right back to where we started. Every single one of these efforts, from a simple checklist to a global movement, it's all about one thing: trust. Clear, honest, complete reporting is the bedrock that our trust in medical science is built on. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. We are absolutely flooded with information every single day. In this environment, how do we, as scientists, as doctors, as patients, make sure that transparency isn't just a nice-to-have guideline, but an absolute non-negotiable requirement for all research?